Okay, good afternoon, everyone. You are welcome to the online session. Today we are going to discuss general method of teaching course and the second unit, which is specifically about active learning methods. So in this regard, we will see in this session what is active learning to you, why active learning is important, why we are discussing active learning methods, and also what makes learning active. Is there any learning which is passive learning, or why we say active learning, active learning? What makes a learning active or not? What are the types and some techniques that we use in active learning methods? So do you know them? So particularly, we will answer such questions. And one more, what do you think are the criteria or the precondition that we put in order to select a particular active learning methods while teaching our students? So we will stay together answering such questions. And in this session, first of all, excuse me for the inconvenient sound because I'm coughing, and so I have some cold here. So in this session, I will describe about these pointers. If you have in the questions in the middle of our discussion, please write your questions in the comment part or in the chat box so that after having the discussion for some minutes, we will back to your questions, and again we will take that question and we'll make part of the discussion. And also you can ask questions when we meet personally, physically in the classroom. So now for the clarity of the message and the discussion, I'm going to put off the camera and we'll just use the audio version. So let me put it off here. Yeah, I think someone is watching. So to begin with, active learning methods, the first question that comes to our mind is, what is it? What is active learning methods? In answering this question, we give priority for the student's engagement. No, the question has to be whether the students are engaged or not in the activity at their hands. Are they really busy? Are they focusing on their activities? Are focusing on their learning at the moment? So we answer these questions. If we answer these questions positively with yes, then we can say students' learning is active now. So in any teaching method that engages students in learning process to make meaning out of learning activities, that is what we call active learning method. So any method, any technique, any means that involves the student's self and mind and which leads them to focus on their specific activities at hand, then that is active learning method. Besides, it can be defined as an investment of a significant amount of mental energy and a high level of psychological involvement in the learning process on the part of the learners can be made the method active learning method. The techniques where students do more than simply listening to lecture or their teacher's speech, where students are discovering, where students are processing the information, where they try to apply what they know on their tasks, the way they do things, and if they are engaged in problem solving activities, which promotes analysis, synthesis, and evaluation of contents, then such methods are active learning methods. At this point, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation are part of uh, cognition development level. They are levels of cognitive development. We will discuss these pointers later on the preconditions that we take into consideration when we select active learning methods. So active learning methods are if individual students actively involve, engage themselves in their learning tasks, if they take responsibility, and if they work in most of their instructional time, then we can say the method that they are using or the method of the instruction is active learning methods. A social process that emphasizes on the process of collaboration and exchanging of ideas, knowledge, experiences, on sharing of skills. That is active learning methods. So active learning methods is not only engaging ourselves into information processing, but also interacting with others, either with the physical environment, like teachers and books, or peers, colleagues, or friends, and also psychological environment. All what we need in active learning is making students accountable for their own learning. Therefore, active learning encompasses all strategies promoting activities that involve students directly or indirectly in the learning process itself. Maybe in doing things or in thinking about what, why, how the students are doing it. As element of active learning method, there should be inputs, process, and outputs. You know, we say active learning methods or student-centered methods requires more energy, more preparation of the teacher. Active learning method, implementing or using active learning method is very demanding. It's very demanding. So input is very important. We have to prepare ourselves from different sources through different strategies. So we are not guided by a single principle, but we compare and contrast, evaluate even sources from which we get information. So we need to engage the students' sense organs to maximize their learning, to maximize their ability of learning. So presenting the students' lecture is important, but we should not stop on lecturing. We have to add varieties, like providing them diagrams, supporting their learning with teaching aids. This will feed their desire to learn. And as we know, we have different students in a class. Their difference may be based on their learning outcomes. Their difference may be based on their background experiences. Individual differences, so many things. So at least in order to fill the interest of the students who have different learning styles, like students who likes to learn through hearing, who likes to learn through visiting or observing or watching something, students who prefer to learn through engaging themselves in activities. So these students have different learning styles. The first ones prefer to hear are auditory learners. The second one is visual learner. And the last one who prefer to learn through activities, through engagement, through practices, trial and error, that is kinesthetic learner. So this is example of the student that we have in the classroom. There could be varieties of differences, number of differences. So as much as possible, teachers need to consider who are the students and how to involve the students in their learning. That is what we call input as an element of active learning process. The second element is process. This is about interaction with people, with the material, stimulating the brain of the students, allowing students to speak, to discuss, to describe, to explain something, to connect the theoretical aspect they are attending in the classroom with their experience, practical experience. So asking them to forward examples, to add ideas, and in general making them part of the process is very important. The last element is output. This is making students produce response or solution. For example, at the beginning, if we put objective, which says at the end of this lesson, the student will be able to explain active learning method. Then at the end of the lesson, we need the students to, to assure that they responded, that they achieved what we put at the beginning. If we question the students' level of explanation, then at the end, we have to be sure about that ability. So we have to listen, we have to hear the responses. So students need to respond to the problems or the achievement, the objectives that we put at the beginning. They have to achieve it. So these are the elements of active learning methods. In order to meet the requirement of active learning methods, it is very important to be a committed teacher. To be a committed teacher, it requires big commitments. Preparing self, considering students, considering the nature of the contents, considering the context at hand, and then planning how to implement, how to teach the students, uh, fixing the procedures or the sequences of the activities in the lesson. This is part of the process. And then what to do at the end of the lesson, how to check the students' understanding, how to consolidate the lesson. All need to be planned in advance of the lesson. So that's why we say active learning or student-centered method is a very demanding for teachers. But this is for purpose. This is for purpose. It will be fruitful because if we engage students, if they immerse themselves fully in their learning, then no question, at the end they learn. So saying this on the conception of active learning methods, let's proceed to the next sub topic, which is the importance or benefits of active learning methods. Dear student, from your previous understanding, from what I was explaining immediately, what do you understand about the importance, the benefits of active learning methods? Okay, it's only two students. Okay, only two individuals are attending. Anyways, let's proceed with the importance of active learning methods. So, even if active learning method is demanding or it requires effort and experience, it increases the development of higher order thinking. Higher order thinking is part of the cognitive process or the mental processing ability of the students. In cognition or in cognitive domain, there are levels of thinking. There are orders, lower orders to higher orders. So active learning had the potential to make students to lead students towards higher order thinking and provides means for the students to assimilate, apply, retain learning. To remember, it minimizes it minimizes the opportunity of forgetting things. It increases. So these higher order thinkings are before dealing this higher order thinking, it is very important to consider the the whole levels of cognitive domain. Learning outcomes, when we define learning, it is a relatively permanent behavioral change on the part of the learners. This is learning. How do we know the behavioral change of the students? There are ways to check the behavioral change. So according to Bloom, there are classifications of these learning outcomes, which indicates the behavioral change of the students. So we have cognitive domain, affective domain, and psychomotor domain, or cognitive, affective, and psychomotor classifications. There are three classifications. The first one deals about cognition, thinking. The second, which is affective domain, that is about attitude, about value, moral issues. And the last one is about the muscular development or development of a skill on the part of the learners. So now it says encourage higher order thinking means we are dealing about the cognitive domain levels. So in here, the level starts from the lower level, which requires low energy of the student's brain to process things, which is knowledge level, at which the students remember, recall, or retain information, to the highest level, which is creativity or synthesizing new ideas, innovations. So from knowledge, comprehension or understanding, application, analysis, evaluation, and synthesis are the six levels, hierarchical levels of cognitive domain. These hierarchies are meaningful. That means the first can't be the second can't be achieved without achieving the first level. That means when we say hierarchical. So in short, it helps us to achieve higher order thinking. Empower students to take responsibility and accountability for their learning, because in here the responsibility of the teacher or the instructor is facilitating, showing the way or the means how to do, following them, not to deviate from the given task, and then supporting, motivating them with feedbacks. Therefore, the responsibility of learning is on the shoulder of the students. There's no choice for the students unless they take their learning responsibility. So it empowers, it gives them confidence. They can start thinking, I'm responsible for my own learning. I can learn by myself. I can engage myself. Because active learning methods enhance learning by doing. It increases ability to think. It even students, when they listen, they became active listener because they are expected to apply what they are listening. They know that because they are responsible for their own learning. Saying this on the importance of active learning methods, what are these active learning methods? Can we mention? Can we name them? Can you call these active learning methods or not? I hope you try. Here, just to name some of active learning methods. There are varieties of active learning methods. You can refer to your reading material, and also you can go to internet and explore what are active learning methods and the types too. But for now, pair works, working with pairs, with friends, is one of active learning methods. That is what we call pair works. Pyramiding, crossover grouping. And here when we say when we mention the names, all you have to bear in mind that all of them have way to be implemented. They have their own procedures on the implementation. Cooperative learning, case study, ranking task, drama, storytelling, peer assessment, evaluation of lesson study, reflection, icebreaker, or warmth and humor. This can be mentioned as active learning methods. But let me raise one question here. Some active learning methods used interchangeably, whereas the procedures that we apply in using them is different. For example, consider cooperative learning and collaborative learning. Cooperative and collaborative learning. Sometimes we use them interchangeably, but the two are different in practical use. When we take cooperative learning, it gives responsibility for individual members of the task group at the beginning. Whereas the collaborative learning method gives all the group members of a task group task, group responsibility from the beginning to the end of the task. The end of the procedure that we use in both cases, cooperative and collaborative learning, is similar. Finalizing tasks as a group. But in cooperative learning, students are expected to work on their responsibilities, which is uh, broken down for the members of that group. But we don't find this independency in collaborative learning. So when you study about the types of active learning methods, try to differentiate what is the difference, what is the similarity, how they are applied in the real situation. In the real situation. So saying this about the types of, because I'm not going in detail on the types of active learning methods, because we are going to have a presentation uh, in the classroom. Students will present their assignments so that we will have opportunity to reflect, to discuss on the different active learning methods after the student's presentation, or while the student present in a blended way. Uh, so when we use different active learning methods, when we have to know the appropriateness of the method that we selected for the task at our hands. So this leads us to consider the preconditions, the basis, or what to consider in order to use a certain active learning method. Basically, it is very important to know the objective or the learning outcome intended to be achieved. So objectives of a lesson need to be one of the criteria to select active learning method. What are objectives here? What are objectives? Objectives are purpose statements. It could be general or specific, depending on the level where we plan to implement it. We plan to achieve it. As I mentioned earlier, learning outcomes, the student's behavioral change is very interrelated with the learning outcomes, which has been categorized as cognitive, affective, psychomotor learning outcomes, or domains, as classified by Bloom. So in here, the objectives may be from affective, maybe from psychomotor, maybe from cognitive, which means objectives may be formulated in order to uh, develop thinking ability of the students, or to develop the value the students have for uh, the for any system, maybe for what's wrong, what's right for the social system, and maybe in order to develop the skill of the students. So we can have objectives from specific to general level. And particularly when we use active learning method, we have to consider the specific objectives, because these objectives are intended to be achieved with an short uh, sessions, because they are very specific, and it is important to uh, achieve them immediately. And the nature of specific subject matter content, the discipline, what we are teaching. Are we in different fields like social science, natural science, specifically, for example, in physics, subject matter, physics contents, history contents, mathematics contents, education contents, like curriculum contents, which content the teacher is planning to teach, about what we are planning our students to learn. Knowing this helps us to select not the best, but potentially appropriate methods. Potentially appropriate methods. The nature of the learners, for example, the learner's interest, learner's need, what is the gap, learner's ability, learner's background experience in general needs to be answered before selecting a specific active learning method. Even the student's age, developmental, because it has developmental implication. If students are new, if the students have no idea about what we are talking about what we are discussing, then it is very important to just give them some tip to use that as a foundation. Like when we construct house, we need foundation at the beginning, and then the wall, the roof, blah blah things come later. Just like that, we need base for our students. At least they can be on that, they can take that tip, and then they can build a new idea on what, based on what we have given to them. So in this case, it is important to use, for example, gap lecture, because it helps us to give them information, important information, which helps as foundation for a new knowledge construction process. Ability of the students. Now, in short, know who are your students. Not only the subject matter, not only your objective, but also who are your audiences. And teacher's personality.
teacher's personality. When we discuss about uh, personal attributes of an effective teacher, we considered that an effective teacher has his own personality, personality of effectiveness. That means ability of making his teaching artistic, motivating. Of course, this cannot be. It can be. It can contribute to the kind of method we are selecting, but it cannot be the major precondition for the active learning method to be selected. But teacher's personality, when a teacher is very experienced, when a teacher is naturally somewhat thoughtful, then there will be high opportunity of using different active learning methods for the teacher. Even the attitude of the teacher can be considered here. There are some individuals who don't like just why the active learning methods. What's active learning methods? What is student-centered methods? They may have different reasons. Some provide reasons like students are not active, students are not cooperative, students are not interested to learn, blah, blah things. Forget about the reasons of the teachers, but the attitude, the value the teacher has on how to teach will matter the application of active learning methods. Besides conditions, facilities, are materials available or not? In order to apply, in order to use active learning methods, as I said, active learning methods are demanding. They demand you material. One may require to have printouts, additional reading materials, which need to be disseminated for the students while they are on task in the classroom. It requires resources. If these resources, if these facilities are unavailable, then it will affect the application or the use of active learning methods. For example, if I don't have printer, then or duplicating machine, then I will just teach maybe through gap lecture, sometimes making them to discuss with their friends sitting next to them. Maybe having questions and answering session, and so on and so forth. But it will restrict opportunity of using other active learning methods. Therefore, our learning outcome or our purpose statement is the nature of a specific subject matter or the discipline or the content, the nature of the content that we are teaching, the nature of the students, like their uh, age level, maybe their interest, their need, their ability, teacher's personality or attitude, and materials, and in general facilities will be some of the preconditions to be considered in using active learning methods. So by this, I have to end the lesson. Next time when we meet physically in the classroom, uh, we will discuss if you have questions or anything which is unclear, anything confusing you, will be given time. So thank you for coming and listening. Because I'm ending here, talking alone is not that much interesting. So yeah, it is enough.